So this is where we pickle the whole butts for the shell cordon process. Same step happens when we're doing Essex or Chrome Excel or anything really. It's just, instead of splitting it into component parts, we do it all in one contained vessel. It's just a way to see what it would look like after pickling, but before we're actually adding in extracts or minerals or anything like that. And then this is coloring in. So these are butts that have been pickled and they've sat for about 2 weeks, and then they come here. And prior to the first pit tannage, we introduce a little bit of that spent liquor just to introduce some astringency to the hides themselves. Because the reason we have to be incremental in how we vegetable tan is if we were to use a solution or a liquor that's that full strength astringency, you end up sealing up the outside fibers and the inside stay raw. So we end up starting gently and then increasing strength as we go along.
Otherwise, you get like a raw bit, like a piece of bread that has like a raw dough in the center or something. Yeah. So this is after the pits. Where are we in the process?
This is right before the first pit tannage.
Okay. And how about these over here? I noticed this is different color.
Those are pickled. So trimmed, hair removed, and then pickled. And then after pickling, they sit for 10 to 14 days. And then they'll get colored in, which is happening here. And they come out and they go in to the pits for 30 days.
Yeah.
For the first time.
One of my favorite demos that I guess your grandfather used to do. Do you know which one? Well, there's two. Do you want to perform one of them? So I'll give you the two. I guess he used to eat it, or maybe you tell me.
Yeah, you bite it, or if it'll hold a thumbprint.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's how. What are you testing for with the thumbprint?
To make sure it's pickled all the way through.
You want to test it?
With my thumb.
Yeah. You don't want to eat it. So if it holds, the idea is that if it holds this shape, we're good to go?
Correct. And if it's raw in the center, it'll spring back.
So the Essex and the Lux leather are not tanned in those, but the same sort of method happens in this other room here. Is that where we're walking towards?
Yes, it's the same mix of processes and philosophies. It's just it happens in a different vessel and a slightly different time frame. Here's Essex waiting to be retanned.
When you say ready to retan, what does that mean?
It's been de-haired, it's been trimmed, it's been sorted, and it's been shaved to a weight that's closer to what the finished weight's going to be.
And if we don't retan it at this point, why do you got to retan it?
Yeah, so I mean, you can see there's the wet blue is next to it too, which is the chrome, so you can see the color difference of the base tannages, with the blue being the chrome and that yellowish color being the wet white, which is no chrome. And in either case, if you were to let them dry, they would dry like a board, because we've taken out all of the oils and fats that lubricate the fibers of the skins. So we then, through retanning or hot stuffing or fat liquoring or wet stuffing or however the formula calls out, we're going to add in different blends or types or combinations of oils and greases and fats, which will then lubricate and make the leather pliable and soft again. And then at the same time, or sort of in the same group of steps, we're going to add in most cases, bark extracts or synthetic resins or any one of a number of waterproofing agents. I mean, it really depends on the product, the customer, and then the end use. So these drums are where we do retanning. So that would be everything that happens on the wet end other than hot stuffing. So that would be wet stuffing, which is stuffing with emulsified greases, fat liquoring, which is more or less similar but a little bit more straightforward, and then introduction of other retaining agents, which is, in our case, mostly bark extracts, which is where the term veg retan comes in. So we would take the chrome base or the other base, the wet white base, and then add in additional veg or veg for the first time in the case of chrome, in order to make a leather that feels nice and will age well. So Chrome XL is basically a veg leather other than the first 24 hours. It's hot stuffed and aniline finished and air dried and everything else you would do to a veg leather. We just do it over a chrome base so it has more tensile strength and more heat resistance. Better performing product.
So any of these, I noticed that there's a lot of chrome tan leathers that you can identify because they're blue. To me, in my understanding of this department, is the first point of delineation for where we can take this chrome tan blue hide or side at this point and turn it into a specific product, and that happens in these drums. So you can, how many different products do you make out of this, or how many could you make out of the chrome tan stuff?
Hundreds.
Yeah.
In this building, hundreds of different variations. You know, all tanneries do some form of getting their product from you know, a hide that has the hair on to wet blue or wet white that looks like this. You know, we have our own wet blue formulation, which is a little bit different, but it's not that different than what's out there in the world. And then once it goes into the retaining drums, that's really where it becomes our product. So those formulas are all proprietary, developed here and tested here. And
your dad has always
here.
told me that this is the core competency of Horween, is this department. That might not look as exhilarating as some of the more like action-oriented things, but there's a lot of it's my understanding that a lot of the formulations that happen in this room are what make it special.
Yeah, that's correct. This room, the pits, and then the stuffing department upstairs, which for sake of argument really is part of retan. It's a separate process for a traditional product, but in the modern sense, when you're wet stuffing or fat liquoring, it's all done down in this department.
So I guess my boots and your boots right now were in one of these mills, certainly.
They were.
Which, by the way, nice boots.
Natural Chrome XL.
Yeah. And I see here some of these drums towards the end here are different sizes. What's with the different size? Because I see huge drums back there and a little bit smaller guys over here.
Yeah, so there's a handful of different sizes, and that's just based on product sometimes and always on order quantity. You know, we make everything to order, so small orders or smaller orders get smaller drums, and that's a sample drum, so that would be, you know, could run a single piece.
You call this the cute drum?
Yeah, right. You can do your laundry in there.
That's a pretty good size reference, I think. Maybe a little bigger than a laundry drum. How are all these? I know we're kind of off hours here right now, but how are every drum in this department? How is this all run?
Yeah, so these guys are done for the day. They start early in the morning because this is really the first step along the way. So they come early so that their first run is coming out, so that the teams that do the drying will have something to work on. Yeah, all of the drums in this room are wood, so they come to us in pieces, and that's because we don't have any doors big enough to get drums this big in through the building. And then there's no automation here. I mean, it's all stop and start based on the push of a button. So all the feeds for the extracts or the dyes or oils or anything else that we're adding in along the way, they're all done by hand. So that means we're running the mill, we're stopping the mill, taking the door off, or making the ad, or putting the mill back on, or putting the door back on, turning the mill back on, and running it for X Y amount of time until we have to do that again until the run is done. So that means that human component is in there again if we ever need to make adjustments, and we can check to see if things are extracted through or dyed all the way through, if that's what the order has been calling for. So that's another one of those steps along the way that we still do by hand that's important.
But I came down here to train, and working in this department was one of the hardest physical things I've ever had to do. And essentially what you do is you load up a mill with all these sides of leather, and they soak up material and water inside of the drum, and it takes a few hours, 6 to 8 to 12 hours, even more, to retan this leather properly. And when it's ready to come out, all these sides are very heavy and completely waterlogged. So the hard task for me was pulling leather out of this drum and piling it onto a pallet like this. So the guys here, and I only did one drum, they were doing 2 or 3, pulling 2 or 3 drums a day, and I was
sometimes more.
I was completely blasted from just one. So this is a tough job here. And then and these are the smaller drums, these are the retanning drums. The bigger drums that we saw down there earlier, that's the real hard job, the pulling of the chrome tanning mills.